The Biden administration is warning Israel to increase humanitarian aid, the amount that it is allowing into Gaza, or it could risk losing U.S. weapons funding. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin sent a letter to their Israeli counterparts, and they did so amid deteriorating conditions in the northern region of Gaza, notably the recent airstrike on hospital tents in which 4 people were burned alive and dozens of other people injured. The U.S. Also noted uh, um, particular concern, I'll say, over Israel halting commercial imports, denying 90%, I'm going to say that again, 90% of humanitarian movements and other restrictions that have kept aid from getting to Gaza. According to the State Department, concrete changes must occur within 30 days. But one reporter questioned spokesman Matt Miller about the ongoing humanitarian crisis and if giving Israel 30 days to respond is a real challenge to Israel, or if it's just a bunch of talk, a bunch of rhetoric, empty rhetoric that the Biden administration is leaning into, that the Democratic Party is leaning into as the election approaches. Here is the exchange.
By weakening Hezbollah, and how do you view the IRGC taking direct control of Hezbollah after the death of Nasrallah?
So I don't want to make any forecasts from here, but I would note that the influence that Iran has had inside Lebanon for the past years through its support for an armed proxy group has had horrible ramifications for the Lebanese people. And it is certainly our hope that Hezbollah's role in Lebanese society and Lebanese government will be diminished, because it's the Lebanese people that ought to have a say in their direction, in the future direction of their country, and they should not in any way be held hostage to an armed terrorist organization.
And lastly, did the administration ask Israel not to bomb Beirut, and did you give any guarantees in this regard to the Lebanese Prime Minister?
So we have made clear to Israel that we oppose the bombing campaign that they had been launching over recent weeks in Beirut. We have seen strikes diminish in recent days, and we'll continue to watch it very carefully.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
On Iran, there's reporting over the past couple of days that the administration has relayed to Iran that any assassination attempt on President Trump would be considered a quote-unquote act of war. The NSC put a statement out. I wanted to see if you had anything on that. And then separately, on the Afghan national accused of plotting a terror attack last week, you said it wasn't clear if he came here on an SIV, even though the DOJ indicated that he had. I wanted to see if you have any more fidelity on that.
Sure. On that, so it is my understanding that he did not enter the United States on an SIV, and I'll refer to the Department of Homeland Security to speak to further questions about his status. When it comes to the threats against President Trump, as we've said many times, we have been closely tracking the threats against former.
So when we look at that kind of footage, when we listen to the pressers, when we hear the responses, it's nothing more than a reiteration of the status quo from what I can tell. The U.S. makes a threat to Israel. Israel says, go screw yourself, and khalas. That's the end of it. This is frustrating for multiple reasons, right? I don't just want to raise the question, as mainstream liberal media and conservative media to some extent is doing, which is the United States really going to put the screws to Israel at the diplomatic level and at the funding level if they don't increase humanitarian aid within 30 days? It's not an unreasonable question, but it's just such a short-sighted question, because the question itself presumes that the solution rests in the United States giving the humanitarian aid to Israel or to Gaza within 30 days, or to allow humanitarian aid in within 30 days. It's such a low bar. What good is it to let aid in if you continue to fund the war machine? What good is it to allow northern Gaza to receive humanitarian goods if we're still going to enable the weapons and the guns in particular and the bombs in particular to enter the space and blow up the built environment, destroy the houses, destroy all the things that make the humanitarian aid necessary. The U.S. is attempting to sanitize its role in all of this by saying, "Well, we want to make sure those Palestinians get aid when they get bombed and dispossessed." But the problem is, the U.S. is the reason at the diplomatic, and the financial level, and maybe even the military level, indirectly, that they're being bombed and dispossessed in the first place. So let's not set the Biden administration up to look like heroes here, to look like they've done something special because they are fighting for Palestinians to get a little bit more humanitarian aid. And we shouldn't act as if they're finally standing up to Israel when, even if they're cutting funding, they're still giving so much. They're still vetoing the UN Security Council resolutions that are attempting to hold them to some standard of accountability. They're doing all the things that make Israel capable of wielding the kind of control that it does over the Palestinian people. And so, no, we're asking the wrong questions, y'all.